Hey there. So I had a thought. I wanted to get it out before it goes away. Just walking around the neighborhood today, but this should be pretty quick. A few years ago, I was working on a music project. I was doing composition for a game, and I had just gotten through, as inspiration, uh, going through a whole series on music and thematic, like narrative composition, led by Hans Zimmer. He did a master class. It was really good. In general, loved it. Hans Zimmer's obviously incredibly accomplished, amazing composer. His body of work speaks for itself. But my point here is one of the things that he said in this series really stuck with me for a while, and I think it's actually, it was a creative block for me recently. I just realized one of the things that he recommended, or let's say that he does, Hans Zimmer, when he is thinking through a new composition, trying to exercise the creative brain and get into the zone for a new film, he will once he starts getting an idea of the kind of genre and musical sort of character of that story, he will intentionally stay away from any similar type of music or genre composed by anyone else. So he basically, it makes sense. He wants to sort of clear the creative brain space. He doesn't want to pollute his own sort of creative influence in that moment with something that's similar, because he's trying to stay in this sort of very personal, individual, and unique generative space. And I really took that to heart for a while. And it works. If you have that kind of brain where you listen to other music and it gets stuck in your head, it's really easy for that to affect what you then create, what comes to mind, the sort of most straightforward things that pop into your brain space as you're trying to compose or create or write or whatever it is. I think this generally happens in all kinds of different domains, not just music. But I just realized recently, if you're working in a domain or a new sort of space of genre, particularly for music, that you're not as immediately inspired on a regular basis. Say you're trying to stretch creatively a little bit and compose for a game where the vibe and the narrative and aesthetic and feel is a little bit different from what you naturally lean towards. Someone like Hans Zimmer has an extensive body of work that influences the kinds of projects that reach out to him. And so most of what he's doing it tends to be within a space that's already heavily inspired by his own prior work. So that stuff, all of those projects seek him out through all of these different people he's built relationships with. Whereas me, I don't have that kind of body of work. I mean, most people, vast majority of people do not. And so if you're working on something where you're trying to stretch your creative sort of genre and space a little bit, you might not naturally be immediately inspired with that kind of direction or idea. And so actually the advice, or at least the sentiment of don't listen to anything else that is similar to what you're trying to create, is not helpful in that particular situation. Because I'm not necessarily on a regular basis, when I just sit down to improvise and make music, I don't have a full drum set, so I'm not trying to make things like breakbeat or Latin merengue or bachata or specifically reggaeton type rhythms. I don't have trumpets laying around, but these are all kinds of influences and flavors that the game developers for the project I'm working on right now really took in from some of their reference material. And so those are things that came naturally to me at first. So I benefit in this situation from listening to ideas and influences in those spaces, because I want to try to pour that influence, those ideas, into my brain and let them mingle, marinate, mix in with what I'm already bringing to the table from my own experience and background and inspiration. And that's where the unique ideas and influence come from in that circumstance, is not just entirely from yourself, Not that anything is ever entirely from your own ideas, but when you are mixing it a little bit, if I'm listening to music to influence those ideas, that stuff immediately percolates in the brain and influences what gets stuck in my head, what kind of new melodies and ideas come out. And it's really helpful as a creative block. And so at the end of the day, the idea that you need to completely isolate yourself from outside influences and that are similar to the creative space you're trying to work in order to stay original, is actually not necessarily helpful in a context that is new to you, where, you know, the client, the project that you're working on is outside of your usual domain. So you're trying to take some influence and ideas. And so I think that's the break that I just realized, is I actually need to relax on myself about this and embrace finding good reference material, pulling ideas from other genres and artists and influences in that same space, and letting them mingle and mix up into whatever new things I'm coming up with. And as soon as I started allowing myself to do that, I'm starting to have new ideas and a little bit of breakthroughs here and there. So that's the idea that I wanted to get out. And if you have a similar kind of brain or creative process and ever had this thought that, like, you know, should I be looking at reference material? Should I be allowing myself to take influence from other artists in this space or other examples? Am I doing that too much? I think the answer is probably not. Even Hans Zimmer takes influence from John Williams and all of the composers that came before him and other people who have emerged in this day and age. So I don't think it's ever an issue to be inspired by the works and explorations of other artists and people before and around you now.